if we believe money should be recovered. And so we're dealing with that issue. She has her own attorney. So we're now trying to figure out where we are. And after we have finished gathering the information that we believe is pertinent in consultation with Dan's office, because he's put his own person on to investigate, we're doing it as a team, then there will be a time in the not too distant future when we can talk to you about which direction we think we should go on a civil basis. Now, it'll be up to FD&LE whether there's any type of, they'll do their own investigation, they'll decide whether they believe there's any criminal issues here. I thought for a second. The other thing that I am not prepared to do today, but this will follow, is that you budget for them. You gave them, they have authority by state law, and you gave them authority. You had some guidelines on them. They violated, obviously, a couple of your guidelines, we think, but what we believe is they may have violated state law. And so those are different issues. I will tell you that I am convinced that there needs to be significant changes in oversight. If we are, now, because we do not run their agency, and so what I'm struggling with is what recommendations can I make with Charlene, Bernadette, and Dan to try and make sure that we have some checks and balances so this can't happen in the future. I'm struggling with that, okay, because they're a separate agency, but I cannot, in good conscience, allow to go on, and I think all of us can allow to go on what we think are enormous weaknesses you drive a truck through. Now, at the same time, while I am not trying to indicate that we have had the same kind of problems in West Volusia or Haw, I do think that there are issues that we saw and we found that we probably ought to do an additional check just to see if we have weaknesses, even if they're not being exploited. We need to see if some of those weaknesses may exist, because I think that if we make a recommendation on how they're to be managed, I think that recommendation should encompass all three agencies, at least as related to their size and to how sophisticated they are and how they handle their records. And so, because while you may have an anomaly here, I do think that some of the weaknesses exist, and they may not have that same anomaly. It doesn't mean that the wrong person got in there, they couldn't do that. All I'm saying is, I think now that you've heard this, you understood where we're restricted to really getting into this and telling you, till we told the agency first. Now we can explain this, but I don't want you to think this is over. We still need to figure out what we're going to do. We're investigating everything between the time of our audit until now. I do believe we should stay, as much as I hate to say this, because the amount of time that like Dave and Don are putting in, together with the rest of the staff, is enormous, but we are not anywhere near ready to turn that back over to them. And then on top of that, because every time we dig, it seems to get deeper, the other thing is I'd like to make some recommendations that we could follow as guidelines. Now, that being said, we also have to look at, do we have our ducks in line if we believe that we have to take some type of action to recover money for the public? And so I don't want that to be done in a way that we shoot ourselves in the foot. I've got to follow what makes the most sense legally when we're doing that administratively. So for us, it's been walking a tightrope. If you believe, or if there was any feeling that you didn't know, it wasn't because we were trying to keep anything for anybody. I'm trying to meet a lot of different difficult standards so that I don't trip ourselves up, and at the same time respect everyone's rights, and including the director, who was the director at the time that we have issues with. I want to do all that and make sure I'm going down two paths. One is what do we do for the things that happen that we think needs to be corrected in terms of whether we need to receive compensation back. And number two, what do we put in place because we see glaring problems here. In other words, maybe someone else didn't exploit them, that obviously they could have been exploited, as we saw. So we need to make sure we have better safeguards.
Well, and I think you answered a lot of what I was going to ask Ms. Weaver, because of, you're going to find some more deficiencies, and you're going to make some more recommendations, and as you said, Mr. Deneen, it's far from over. There'll be more recommendations coming to the council, and then it needs to be far from over because of the fact that we do delegate this authority to a body we need to make sure that we outline in the future how that body will operate. And that we have oversight in the future, because we just don't want this to happen again.
Right, and what makes it different with the ad agencies is that they have, you've given them authority, or they have authority, and you, I guess it's both. You've delegated some of that authority, they probably have it by state law, to expend money. A lot of the other appointments you make to people are boards that make recommendations. These people actually, the way it's set up, and I have problems with this, by the way. I know some people won't like me saying that, but if you're looking at the things I'm seeing, I have some problems with the checks and balances, which don't appear to be there, and I don't think the way that some of that public money is being spent, I don't think that could ever happen here with our checks and balances because it's inappropriate.
And I guess this goes to something that Mr. Wagner brought up at the last meeting, and I know, Bernadette, you also review the city of New Smyrna Beach's budget as well as their CRA. And we delegate the CRA to responsibilities to a board. I'm not going to go there right now, but we do need to be looking at these types of situations. Just the way we're doing it with the ad authority, also for CRAs. I'm not pointing to one specific CRA, to all CRAs, and to anybody that we give that kind of authority to. Okay, thank you for that. Let me go to some council members real quick. Ms. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Bernadette, I want to say thank you to you and your team too, because I know y'all have worked really hard and made a great presentation yesterday. There are a couple of questions that I do want to ask you. You know, your the financial statements you mentioned were in order, so to speak.
Yes.
But had the checks not been backdated, what would something have shown up at that point? Where
I have that exactly, actually, but if we wouldn't have found that error, there would have been a statement. If you hold on for a second,
okay.
so I can find that page.
For clarification, many of the checks were backdated quite a weeks past, right?
Yeah,
So
checks
that-
backdated, which means that they were backdated to September 30th or earlier when they were actually written, let's say sometime into October or I don't know exactly. That's when they were dated. But basically, right, so what we found, if we had not corrected these errors, cash would have been understated by approximately $108,000. Accounts payable would have been understated by approximately $58,000, and expenditures would have been overstated by approximately $56,000. That's comment number 7 on page 17.
Okay, and I want to highlight another thing too. You was mentioning that, did you say a couple more workers' comp claims have been filed, or was that?
Charlene talked about that. That has been represented to me, and that happened subsequent to September 30th.
Okay,
So
that's
I
okay.
actually, do you want to address that again, Charlene?
No, that's all right. We maybe can do that later then with an audit. One other thing that I wanted to add, which I thought was kind of interesting to let's point out too, for those who have not had a chance to read the report. Not only was her salary received a bit different than what had been agreed upon, but the assistant director as well as the part-time persons had been also adjusted a couple of times during that time, and the part-time person had a 45% increase, and it just goes on and on.
What Joe is talking about there actually is on page 21. It's comment number 21. And this is a recommendation. And probably, I'm just going to read it because then I won't state it improperly. In the performance of our audit procedures, we noted the assistant executive director received an 8% increase in salary under the new executive director, and a part-time employee received a 45% increase in her hourly rate, an 18% raise under the old executive director, followed by a subsequent 27% raise under the new executive director 5 months later, during the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2011. Now this is separate and apart from bonuses described in the paragraph below, which I will now read. We also noted for the past several years, full-time and part-time employees were commonly given bonuses twice yearly based on performances determined by the executive director. However, bonuses given to employees in July and December 2011 were significantly higher than they have historically been. For example, the assistant executive director and a part-time employee were awarded bonuses totaling $3,200 and $1,250 respectively in June and December, which was 6% of their base salary before bonuses over a 12-month period. So finally, beginning in August 2011, the assistant executive director received an additional $250 per pay period to defray the cost of her personal health insurance. Historically, only the executive director had received health insurance benefits. The preceding increases in pay and benefits were all initiated at the executive director's sole discretion, although the treasurer did initial payroll timesheets indicating his approval. And again, I want to stress really, this is not illegal.
But you're making a recommendation.
What I'm recommending is that everybody should be on the same page. Okay? So again, I'll read our final recommendation here, and that was, in light of the current economic environment and the fact that the majority of County of Volusia employees did not receive pay increases during fiscal years 2010 or 2011, and received only a 3.5% increase effective October 1st, 2011. We recommend a published pay scale be adopted for all employees, with pay increases mirroring those received by County of Volusia general employees. In addition, we recommend all raises, bonuses, if any, and benefits be brought to the Board of Directors for their approval.
And one other quick question that I have. With with their hiring, or with SVAA hiring that independent contractor, or if it were classified as independent contractor to do the work that was done there.
Yes.
And what repercussions could that have been for all of us?
Okay, well, it was if one of them was injured while they were working, or injured someone else while they were working, Dan can probably talk about this better than me.
It would have made us liable for whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Potentially liable.
So we just got a bunch of work to do to make sure we do have.
But if you touch on this last point that she talked about in terms of how they give up raises, you have to look at what philosophically the council wants to do. Since I have been here as manager, and things have started, it wasn't because I came, it just so happens, and things went the other way on revenue. The council has taken the position, at least in 5 of the almost last 6 years I've been here, where you believed that if we were supporting an agency with public money, either in total or in large part, that you recommended that they follow your lead in terms of how you are compensating people. You made that clear. I mean, we've had partners like GoTrain and all that wait to give out they look at that. Now, you could have people believe that, and I think this probably went on, that once they allocated the money to them, it was kind of their money. And they'll manage it any way they want to manage it. Now, for all I know, that was the philosophy before I got here, and maybe that's the way people did things, and you were okay with that. What I'm saying is, if you don't believe that's the case, then you have the responsibility to tell them that that's what your expectations are. And in this case, either they didn't understand that that was what you believe should happen, or they didn't feel that they were obligated by that philosophy. Because obviously, you saw we would not do what they did, or you would think they would have asked us about that. But really, you need to be the ones that decide if you're going to give them the money, whether you want to have that kind of, I don't know if it's control or policy guidelines.